Welcome, friends. It's nighttime here, and I'm getting ready to settle in for what I hope will be a long winter's nap. But before I can do that, I want to share with you my research and thoughts regarding Anna Duggar's possible means of leaving the Duggar compound, buying her own home, making her own money, and moving on with a life separate from Josh Duggar. In my video, The Psychology Behind Being Anna Duggar, I talk about the issues Anna may be facing when it comes to understanding, comprehending, and putting plans into place for her to leave or even distance herself at all from the Duggar family. Please check out that video if you want more information about what's possibly going on in Anna's mind behind the big gates that surround the Duggars compound. First, I want to share a clip of Jana speaking with her closest sister, Priscilla Waller, to give a more accurate idea of where someone like Anna's headspace might be operating from.
We want to tell you about the best decision we ever made in our entire life, and that was to give our hearts to the Lord. When I was 10 years old, I had prayed because I knew I didn't want to go to hell, but I wasn't sure on all what salvation meant, and I woke up just 2 days after I turned 10 years old, and I went and I talked to my mom, and my mom took me to my dad, and my dad explained to me that getting to heaven is like kind of like softball. When you there's a home base, and he's like, let's picture Priscilla, home base is heaven, there's a first base, second base, and third base, and home. And to get to home, to get to heaven, you have to have 3 heart attitudes.
Drive you in the ditch.
That's right. My story is a little different. Being raised in a Christian home, I was, heard the plan of salvation from day one practically. And I remember being in Sunday school and had a great Sunday school teacher that wanted to make sure that all of us knew about Jesus and we're going to spend eternity in heaven. And so she said, how many of you guys have given your heart to Jesus and prayed the prayer? And every hand went up except mine. And I remember all my friends in Sunday school class looking at me and being shocked and be like, oh, you didn't pray the prayer? And all of a sudden I felt like, oh my, I'm not in the club. Like, I am left out. And then she said, well, how many of you have been baptized? And again, everybody else except me raised their hand. And so I felt really awkward and left out. And so I remember going home and thinking, well, maybe I can get baptized and I can be like my other friends. And so I was so sad, I started crying and talking to my parents and telling them I wanted to get baptized. And so I wanted to get saved. And so they shared the plan of salvation, and I appreciated that Jesus died for me, but I didn't want him to have the steering wheel or the control of my life. I wasn't interested in that, and I wasn't sorry for my sin. Like, I appreciated him, but I wasn't broken over who I was, and I didn't think I needed help because I was a pretty good person, I thought. And so I prayed the prayer so that I could fit in and be like everyone else in Sunday school. And then as time went by, as years went by, I remember being so frustrated because people talked about their relationship with Jesus and how God speaks to them through his word. I thought, well, if a Christian is supposed to read the Bible, I'm going to read my Bible every day and I'm not going to miss a day so that I can look like a Christian. And I remember learning great things but being frustrated. As time went by, I really knew that I hadn't given my life to the Lord. I knew I wasn't saved, but I was afraid of what my friends would say and what would people at church say if they knew that I was just acting like a Christian. And so I was so afraid of what people would think that I remember being under conviction so many times and just saying, no, I'm not going to do this. And I remember one Wednesday night, our pastor was preaching a series of messages on the Holy Spirit and how God's Spirit indwells us and changes our lives. And that night I was under so much conviction. I said, no, I am not going to do this because I'm afraid of what people will think. And that Saturday, my sister and my brother, were running an errand, and my sister fell asleep driving and flipped her car in the ditch. And the first thing I remember after everything was silent was like, I could have died. I could have gone to hell. The next day at church, all of our friends were like, hey, so glad you guys were okay. We heard about the car accident. And so I was there and I was like, yes, I'm so glad, praising the Lord for his mercy. And I was like, if we had died, I know where I'd be. And in my heart, I was like, yeah, I know where I'd be. I'd be in hell right now if I died. That's really scary. And so I remember being miserable for a few days. And so then after about 3 days, I remember I was milking our goats. We had goats at the time.
Okay, friends, I hope you can understand I had to cut it off there because it just goes on for quite a long time with Anna sharing more about her testimony of how she came to the Lord. I hope you know that I'm not trying to make fun of the testimony that she and Priscilla are giving here in this RV. This was actually posted to Priscilla and David Waller's YouTube account. Priscilla is Anna's sister, and David Waller is part of the Waller family. They're very high up in the IBLP, and I know that they provide Anna with a lot of support, the kind of support that says you should stay in this doctrine and respect your husband. And you can kind of see here that Anna and Priscilla seem very well indoctrinated, sitting here in the RV, kind of putting on a performance for us, for the camera, talking about their testimony as to how they came to Jesus. And I guess I'm kind of pointing out with some of the comments I put on the screen as they were speaking that a lot of this seems somewhat immature, and I think that that's something we can think of when we're dealing with Anna's mindset, that there's an immaturity to her, a lack of understanding things about the world as most of us know it, because she has been raised in a way where there's some sheltering. There's a lot going on with her mindset that wouldn't be so easy for someone like me who didn't grow up in the IBLP to understand. Many of you, my viewers, have commented on my videos about the Duggars, and specifically on videos about Anna, letting me know you see many options and opportunities for Anna to leave the IBLP. I'm going to highlight some of those comments in this video, and then I'm going to provide some feedback about stumbling blocks I believe are currently in Anna's way, specifically having to do with contracts with Jim Bob, non-disclosure agreements, and her contracts with TLC. And I'm also going to share how she can most easily potentially overcome these stumbling blocks, and which of her sisters has the means and opportunity to help her. So first, let's take a look at some of your comments. You're my expert Duggar viewers, and let's see what you've had to say. Okay, so I think this is a good jumping off point, starting with a comment from a viewer who comments frequently, Kenyon. Kenyon says, Anna lives in a cycle of hope and crash burn. The over and over cycle distorts your thinking. It creates trauma bonding. The neglect, abuse, and happiness and joy continue on and on. Those around her, yes, by her choice, encourage her to stay in the relationship. Since she was 20, she has been in an almost constant state of hormonal flux. She is either pregnant, nursing, or recovering until she does it all over again. She is told she can't trust her feelings. Everyone knows what pregnancy does to a brain, all those overwrought emotions. Many women get brain fog during pregnancy. It gets better with breastfeeding, but it's still challenging. Never underestimate what a mother will sacrifice to keep her children with a roof over their heads, clothes on their bodies, and food in their bellies. If she stays with Josh at this point, she is on easy street. Why leave? She can preach to young girls about sticking by your man. She can love someone from afar. His family will support them. They will not be traumatized by Josh as long as she stays. After everything settles in, she will be fine. In fact, probably better than fine. Leaving at this point makes little sense unless she wants to remarry. I'm sharing this comment because many times over, I've wondered if maybe Anna does feel better off now that Josh isn't home and she can just live in the warehouse behind her in-laws, get some help from them, help from her sister-in-laws. It's possible that this arrangement is comfortable for her and maybe she prefers it to leaving. However, this video is about what escape route exists for her if she does want to leave. I think Kenyon's comment does give us a good look at what Anna's up against, what she's been going through for the past several years, and where she's coming from when she's thinking about whether or not she wants to leave. And here we have a comment from my viewer Diane, and she expresses the sentiment that is most often expressed about Anna in many of my comments on my videos regarding the Duggars. Diane says, divorce, then get a tell-all book deal. It seems like many people think it will be easy for Anna to leave the Duggars and then just start some kind of business, tell-all social media campaign and make a lot of money from it. And here, another viewer, Graham King, states she still needs to apply for welfare and food stamps, even with Jim Bob helping her. Also, she still has her LLCs. But it wouldn't surprise me if Jim Bob has her sign them over to him since it's Josh's money. So Anna and Josh, they do have some LLCs and different businesses and properties in their names. It does seem to be mostly tied up with Jim Bob and some of the other Duggar brothers, so I'm not sure how that would fare for her. One thing I think about a lot is that even if Anna does have a certain amount of money that she's left with after Josh leaving, and even if she does have property or businesses like LLCs, it's sort of like, what good is that to her if she doesn't have the education or the know-how or the connections to be able to do the things she needs to do with those items to get what she needs for her kids? And this last viewer makes a comment that I see pretty frequently and I can certainly understand. The viewer says, you have to always make your own money. Never depend on a man lest you be controlled. I can certainly understand that sentiment. I think many of us can agree that it's best to have some independence and be able to provide care for yourself and for your children, especially in a situation like Anna is in. Once again, I question what my expectations can be for her. What kind of education does she have? What kind of understanding of the outside world does she truly have? Some say she has more than we think. And I'm going to go ahead and move into why I think things are a little more complicated than we want to recognize for Anna.
Now, I'm going to share with you some information about how TLC and Jim Bob may be using contracts and non-disclosure agreements to silence those around them and limit the opportunities for people like Anna to speak out, make alternate decisions, and ultimately leave the Duggar family behind. The following information comes from an article written by a source who worked with TLC and understands basic information about how their contracts work. Did you know that once the Duggar specials gained national attention, Jim Bob Duggar created a production company that he owns and he uses it to deal directly with TLC? This means Jim Bob's company gets paid, but then it's up to him how he uses and distributes the actors who work for the company, aka all of his children. Most of the over 18-year-old children are probably under a special contract with Jim Bob's production company, and for the under 18 kids, he will just have to sign a waiver. Jim Bob probably has the money he earns go directly to a trust, sometimes called an S-Corp, and he would be the majority shareholder. This ensures that the income isn't taxed when it's specifically spent on things like housing payments, hence many of the children potentially getting a house as a gift from Jim Bob when they get married, and that's allegedly. With Jim Bob as the head of the trust, he would basically control the purse strings. Kind of think about Britney Spears and her dad, along the same lines, only different. The money is there, but the 19 kids would only have access to it if their father decides to grant them access to it. He can also receive a payment from the trust as the head of the S-Corp, providing him with further income. People who sign contracts to appear on shows like 19 Kids and Counting usually sign a 7-year contract up front, holding them in shackles for the 7 years with no ability to make changes to that contract. So, it's likely Anna could still be under contract with Jim Bob's production company, not TLC. Meaning TLC cannot necessarily just offer Anna a new show or different contract, or a contract to write a book. It's possible so many stipulations are written into the contract, such as you can't talk about the family on social media unless given permission. We've seen that even a person like Derek, with a fairly normal and good education, has had trouble understanding and breaking free from the contracts in place with Jim Bob and TLC. If it was so easy, wouldn't Derek have written the book he keeps teasing us about? And what about the non-disclosure agreements? Breaking a non-disclosure agreement could cause so many issues for a person like Anna. I really think writing a book about the Duggars or speaking out about her family or husband in any way is truly off the table, at least for a while now. So, back to where we started. Where does this leave Anna? Can we see now it's not just as easy as take your kids and make money off the Duggar brand somewhere else? This is where my thoughts about Anna's potential escape have led me. To Rebecca Ann Hunt. Rebecca is actually Ann's little spoken about older sister. She was born May 15th, 1983, so a bit older than Anna. She actually appeared on 19 Kids and Counting in some kind of random episode about Anna's family. She has several other siblings. Several are still or even more enmeshed with the IBLP. Some have left the faith, but don't seem to have the best financial prospects to help Anna and her children if she does leave the Duggars. But then there is Rebecca. Rebecca was married to her husband, Josh McDonald, and had 2 children with him, but shockingly divorced her husband in 2015. The reasons listed were discord or conflict of personalities between Rebecca and Joshua. Interesting that his name was Joshua. And it destroyed the legitimate means of the marriage relationship. Rebecca was granted primary custody of their children, with Joshua getting them every other weekend. Then, all of a sudden in 2018, Rebecca posted pictures of her with her family hosting Thanksgiving, and it was pretty much confirmed that she had remarried a man named Kevin Hunt. Who is Kevin Hunt? It turns out Kevin and Rebecca live in Texas, and he helps her raise her 2 daughters from the prior marriage. Kevin is the president of a company called Valve Technologies in Houston. He actually created, managed, and sold several companies in his lifetime. Valve Technologies Incorporated manufactures flow control devices, and in December of 2021, so right around the time Josh was found guilty, the Severn Group announced acquisition of Valve Technologies, so a group that's made up of millions of dollars. As part of the transition, Mr. Kevin Hunt stepped down as president and he handed the company over and likely received a pretty penny. A couple of years ago, Anna was photographed in a private plane with her sister Rebecca. And I'm not talking about no John David Duggar tiny plane. I'm talking about a luxury private plane. People were really surprised and shocked about it on Reddit. Rumors say that the plane was commissioned by Kevin Hunt to fly the Keller family to some kind of family gathering or wedding, seemingly confirming that Rebecca and her husband had the means to potentially help someone like Anna get her on her feet and provide some backup at times when she's in need. Not only that, but with signs that Rebecca and her husband do not adhere so strictly to the fundamentalist doctrine, it's likely they would be more willing to support Anna and help her find her way outside of the community she's used to. Kevin also seems like a good resource to help get a lawyer who would potentially work with Anna to discover what financial income streams are doable, despite the many contracts Anna likely has with Jim Bob. And this is where I turn and look at the example set recently by Christine Brown. Christine Brown from the Sister Wives likely also had some similar contracts in place, much like Anna Duggar. She recently left her husband, moved away, and separated herself from the family, even claiming she no longer believes in polygamy. How did she do it? She was definitely smart. Likely, she worked in harmony with Cody and with TLC, trying not to get anyone's feathers too ruffled. Instead of going off and making a show that relies on talking about her family, she took one of her own personal passions and strengths and is attempting to start up a cooking show. I see so much value in this for her, not only in people watching the show, but potentially also being willing to purchase merchandise like cookware or cookbooks. This is such a smart move for Christine, and I know we all wish her the best. So what about Anna? Well, I'm simply hypothesizing that with a little help and support from the right people, I wonder if TLC and even Jim Bob would be willing to allow Anna to work on her own show, maybe a show about homeschooling or interior design or whatever kind of passion she could muster up. If someone like her brother-in-law can help her get a lawyer to put a better contract in place for a show, Anna could potentially see the light as she's finally able to control some of her own money and resources. This in itself could be a huge step forward for Anna, even if she doesn't leave the Duggar compound. Having her own money and resources is a good place for her to be. So what I am getting at here is, psychologically, we already know it's not going to be easy for Anna to leave the Duggars, but I'm saying financially it may not be as easy as we all assume. Anna needs people she can trust, and I'm sorry to say I don't think that's Jim Bob. Anna needs TLC to step up and step in and offer her some kind of workable deal. Do you think that they're even willing to do something like that? If Anna really wanted to escape, can she? I think about this a lot as I repeatedly head down my Duggar rabbit holes. I continue to believe and have faith in a better existence for Anna, somewhere out there, maybe beyond the Duggar compound gates.